What's up, internet? I am going to try and do this very long overdue November wrap up that I just realized that I never actually did, so let's just give that a shot. November was actually a really busy reading month. I read 10 books plus a little bit of another one that I'll talk about in a minute or two, and I read a total of 3,004 pages. So I'm really pleased with that. A lot of my books were like 3, 4, 5 ratings, so I was pretty happy about that as well, and let's just get right into them. The first book that I read this month was called Little and Lion by Brandy Colbert. This book is mostly from the viewpoint of Little, her and her stepbrother Lion. He's a year older than her. He ends up getting diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And to cope with that and everything that's going on with him, their parents send her off to boarding school, like several states away. Like, they live in California and they send her to boarding school somewhere on the East Coast, basically because it's like they don't want to have to deal with her and everything that's going on with him. And they frame it to say that they're trying to make it better for her and they wouldn't want her to be worrying and have so much on her plate, but she mostly just feels like they kind of abandoned her there and left her there. So after a year of boarding school, they get his diagnosis a little bit more under control, and she comes back for the summer to see how it's going to go, and she just talks about how she tries to reconnect with her brother. Oh, and by the way, they both end up getting a huge crush on the same girl, so that's probably not going to play out very well. But I really like the writing in this. This was a really quick book to get through. It didn't take me very long at all to read it. I think I read it in like a day and a half or something, and I gave it 4 stars. So the next thing that I read is Please Find This, I Wrote This For You and Only You by Ian Thomas. It's a collection of poetry. He put together several collections of poetry. I ended up giving this book 3 stars, I believe. Yeah, 3 stars. It's kind of really similar to the Tyler Not Gregson books that I've shown before that I've read in here. So he just goes and there's like a piece of artwork attached with each poem, and it's just really like a collection of different things like that. Some of them are in color, most of them are in black and white basically. One of the ones that I really liked is called The Weight of Stone. If you tie every word you've ever heard about yourself on a string around your head, one day you won't be able to lift it anymore. So, I don't know. A lot of these I just kind of thought to be okay, I guess. I was hoping I would like it as much as I like the Tyler Not Gregson books, but I really didn't. There were a couple that I thought were really good that I like post-it note the ones that I really like. That I thought were really good, but a lot of them I thought were just kind of average, or I didn't really get it. So I ended up just giving this book a 3. Next, I ended up picking up Release by Patrick Ness. I was really excited whenever I found out that this book had come out. I don't know how long ago it came out. Not that long ago, though. Because I really like Patrick Ness, and this book did not disappoint at all. I ended up giving this book 5 stars. This is a story about Adam. Adam, he has super religious parents. He's like the pastor's son. It's him, his brother, his mom, and his dad. Yeah. And Adam is also gay, and his dad is not really taking that very well. They're a small town, not really taking that very well. He's dating a boy behind their back, and then, he just really feels outcast. He feels like he has to walk on tiptoes, like nothing he ever does is good enough for his dad. His dad wanted him to like follow in his footsteps and be a pastor and have his own church, and Adam's really struggling with that, dealing with his ex-boyfriend moving away, his new boyfriend being in his life, his best friend who got accepted to do some kind of like, I think it was like a work program or an early college thing or something, but she's leaving for their senior year of high school, and she's not going to be around anymore, and she's been his ally since they were kids. And so, long story short, some shit ends up going down in the family. Adam comes out in the open, and everybody is dealing with the repercussions of everything that they've been trying to bury for years. I thought that this was super well written. Oh yeah, and by the way, there's a ghost in the lake who is rising, and you get to see this ghost intermittently throughout the story. The story is told in one day, actually, which is kind of neat. It's over the course of one day, and I don't really want to tell you any more about that. 5 stars. After that, I picked up Skinny by Donna Cooner. Yeah. This was a book that I just found like at a thrift store. The main character is considered to be very overweight. She weighs more than 200 pounds. She's in high school. She gets a weight loss surgery. And this book is talking about her leading up to weight loss surgery, and then shortly after getting the weight loss surgery. I give this book a 4. It's all from her point of view. Most of it is just her talking about her experiences in high school. And then they have these, she weighed over 300 pounds, not 200 pounds. They have these little things in there too, where she's like documenting her week, documenting her weight loss, things like that. And it just talks about how people treat her differently before and afterwards, and what everybody thinks of her now that she had this surgery, what she thinks of herself. And she talks a lot about her relationship with Skinny, which is this voice in her head that is constantly telling her that she is too fat. I don't know. I thought it was pretty good. Most of the time whenever I see books like this about somebody who has a dramatic weight loss, they don't talk very much about like leading up to it or the early stages of it. They just kind of talk about it happened and now you've dropped a couple 100 pounds, and we sort of pick up the story there. But I like this one because we didn't do that. We saw her early journey, so it was interesting, and it was very short. After that, I read a book called Stay, A History of Suicide and the Philosophies Against It, and this book is by Jennifer Hecht. This book is probably not one that you would want to pick up unless you're into philosophy, which is something that I'm pretty into, or unless you're into suicide, which I'm into mental health, so I'm into that as well. This book basically goes through it. It reads less like a textbook than the last book that I talked about in Night Falls Fast, but it still kind of has that vibe to it. It talks about how different times in the world and different like viewpoints in the world, how they think about suicide. So it talks about the ancient world, what religion has to say, the rise of modernism, secular philosophy, defending suicide, the argument for the community, social sciences, what they have to say, hope to your future self, and then the 20th century's conversation about suicide. I thought it was really interesting. It was a little bit hard to get through just because, like I said, it kind of reads like a textbook. It's pretty dense. There's a lot of stuff in there. I ended up giving it 4 stars as well, but I really feel like I learned something, and at the end of the day I read this book because I wanted to learn something. I also had picked it up at a thrift store. Yeah, so that's what I have to say about that. Afterwards, I picked up Why We Broke Up by Daniel Handler. I love this book. This book got a 5. I was very surprised because when I was on Goodreads, people don't really like this book, and I'm not really sure why. I saw like some 5s and some like 2s. Like people either really liked it or they really didn't. I thought this book was really cool. So this book is told, it's kind of like a letter to this boy Ed, and then it's the girl telling the story about why they broke up. They had like it was like a 1 to 2 month relationship, and it just, everything that she puts in the box is a reason why they broke up. So like she'll and they have these beautiful illustrations in there. So she'll have like the camera, and then we'll talk about, you know, why the camera is part of the reason why they broke up. And then she'll have like a letter that one of them wrote, and then she'll talk about why that is part of the reason why they broke up. And then she'll have like a bottle of alcohol, and it just goes through and it just shows everything that's in this box, and she explains why they were never going to last and why they weren't meant to be. And a lot of the complaints I've been seeing about this book are that it's kind of shallow, or that there's not really a lot to it, but why can't it just be what it is? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a high school girl telling about a 1 to 2 month relationship. It's not going to be some super deep thing. I mean, they weren't dating for very long. She's just telling her story and her experience with this boy and why they ended up being different people and how she came to find that. And I think that can just be what it is on its own, and it doesn't have to be anything more. Like, what I really liked about this book is I didn't feel like it was trying so damn hard. I feel like a lot of YA romances are trying so hard to be something deep, or to have some kind of message, or to be something different from, you know, what everybody else is writing about. But this book didn't have to try. It just showed what it was, and then we wrapped it up, and then we moved on, and I was really appreciative of that. I thought this book was great. I would recommend it 5 stars. Next, I read This Song Will Save Your Life by, I think it's Lila Sales. I think it's Lila. This book is about a girl called Elise, and she moves back and forth across town with her mom and her dad because they are divorced, and she kind of feels like she doesn't really fit in anywhere. Feels like she doesn't fit in her high school. She doesn't fit in moving between these two families. She doesn't really have a lot of friends. She's very unpopular, and she's very socially aware of where she stands in her high school. And so to cope with that, she takes walks in the middle of the night. She takes walks by herself, and she listens to music because she has a real passion for music and for songs. And one day while she's walking around the town, she sees these 2 other girls walking, and they sort of like ask her, "Oh, are you here for this thing?" And she sort of plays along and says, "Oh yeah, I'm here for that," and walks into this like warehouse with them, and ends up at this like underground DJ dance party kind of thing. And not so long story made shorter, she ends up learning how to be a DJ and playing songs and going to this underground music thing that moves around the town every week. And it's sort of her story about her trying to find herself and find her voice in music, and what ends up happening when her nightlife meets her daytime real-time life, and how she has to try to reconcile those 2 different parts of herself. I thought this was really beautifully done. I resonate a lot with books that talk about song and how you use song and music to sort of make sure you don't lose yourself amongst everything else. It talks about how brutal high school can be, which it absolutely can. If you've been through high school, it's pretty brutal. And it's her story about that. I thought it was great. I had never heard of it before. I saw it at a thrift store as well and picked it up, mostly because of the cover. I thought that her with these glasses and her cute little sweater and her headphones, I thought it was really neat, so that's where I got that from. 5 stars. Another book that I picked up that also got a 5, Boy Meets Depression, or Life Sucks and Then You Die, or Live, actually. And this book is by Kevin Briel. I saw this book. I've seen this book online a couple times, and I've wanted to buy it, but it's been really expensive. So finally I found it on Book Outlet, and it was super, super cheap. It was like $3-4, and I said, this is it, this is mine. So I picked it up. This book is based on a TED Talk that a guy named Kevin Briel did about his life, where he talks about how he went through, and almost lost the battle to his depression as he was growing up as a young adult. And he just talks about his experiences and how men aren't supposed to be depressed, men aren't supposed to talk about their emotions, and ends up making their depression worse. So he talks about how he moves up and down through the depression, and how he eventually learned to cope with it on the other side. So it's, what do you call that, a memoir? Is that what you call that, a memoir? It's a memoir, or it's an autobiography, or it's whatever it talks about. It's about him, and it actually happened, and I can't remember what the term is for that. Sorry. But I liked it. I like reading books about people's experiences with their depression. I think it's just the mental health aspect in me. And at the end of every chapter, he does these little things that he calls, can you see that? He calls note to self. So after every chapter, he makes a note, which is basically kind of like a point. So this chapter was called Confused, and the note to self says, when you feel fucked up, stop, breathe, talk to someone, tell them stuff, stop being an asshole and thinking you're going to get through it alone. Problems are like broken pipes. They need a person to fix them. Oh, and clean your room, you filthy animal. And so it's sarcastic, and it's witty, and it's funny, and it's honest. And I really appreciated that he wasn't going to sugarcoat anything in this book. He's just telling his experience exactly how it was. After that, I had my first experience with A.S. King, and I read I Crawl Through It, which is like magical realism, I think is what it's called. This book was wild. I gave this book a 5 as well, even though, mostly because I still don't really understand everything that happened. So A.S. King has this style of writing where it's kind of hard to tell what is truly happening in the book that like other characters can see and know about, and what is just happening inside someone's head, what's a metaphor, what's not a metaphor. It all gets very, very blurry. Don't read a book like this if you need something that has clear answers and things that are very clearly defined and straightforward, because that's not what you're going to find in this book. So this book is about 4 teenagers, 4 high-pressure, very intelligent teenagers in high school. It's about their experience with the school and their standardized testing, and how they're basically all sort of crumbling and collapsing underneath the pressure of trying to do everything that all the adults are telling them to do. So this book takes place with different voices. The characters take turns. So like at the beginning of each chapter, it'll tell you like who is saying the chapter and what day or what time it is, anything like that. So you get Stanzi as one of the main characters. She's a biology genius. She never takes off her lab coat. She is in love with Gustav, who is a physics genius and is building an invisible helicopter in his garage that Stanzi can only see on Tuesdays, but nobody else can see it ever, except for Gustav. He swears he can see it every day, and his dad does too. And then we have Stanzi's best friend, whose name is China. She's the girl who swallowed herself. She just swallowed herself up one day, and now she's a walking rectum and intestines and stomach. And whenever everybody sees her, that's what they see, because she buries and hides inside herself because of something that happened to her. We also have Lansdale Cruz. Lansdale is a liar. The popular girls don't like her. She's popular. The nerds don't like her. She's a nerd. And whenever she lies, her hair grows. So she's constantly cutting off her hair because it's constantly growing because she's a liar. So those are the 4 teenagers that are main characters. We also have the dangerous bushman. He gives out letters in the bushes to people who pass if they, ask and answer his questions. Lansdale and Stanzi aren't afraid of the bushman, but China is, and she walks on the other side of the street. And then we also have their parents, some of the kids' parents. And do you see what I mean? Even just trying to give you briefly what this book is about, it sounds wild. And some of them end up going on this invisible helicopter to this location on a map that the bushman gives them. And, their parents are never around, and there's this big investigation. You find out why Stanzi has PTSD. You find out, what happened that led to China being raped. You find out, why Lansdale's mother and father are really not in the picture, and why, Gustav has this obsession that he does, and what happened that made the bushman be the way that he is. You get some pieces and aspects of their life, but a lot of it is really just left very open-ended into interpretation. And I gave it such a high rating because I've never read anything like this, and I think I'm going to continue to read more by A.S. King. So then I read The Merciless 2 by Danielle Vega. I was really nervous about reading this book. I bought this book at the same time that I bought The Merciless, which has a very bright pink cover, and I didn't really like The Merciless. I gave it a 3, barely, I think. It was... The books are related. You should read them in the order that they came out in. The first book is about this girl named Sophia and her going to a new school and meeting these friends who end up thinking that this one girl is possessed, and they try to give her an exorcism, and shit goes down. So this second book is after that. It is still about Sophia. But Sophia's mom passes away, and she ends up having to stay at this Catholic boarding school because nobody knows what to do with her. She doesn't have any other family, and one of the boys at the boarding school thinks that she is possessed by the devil, and so this is the story. This is the exorcism of Sophia Flores, basically, which is not giving it away because I mean, it says that if you just click on the Goodreads, that's what the story's about. So, but this one ended up being just a little bit better. I gave the first one a 3, I gave this one a 3.5, and mini spoiler alert, I did also read the Merciless 3, which I'll talk about next month, and end up giving it a 4. So I'm liking them a little bit more as I read them. This one is kind of like exorcism meets torture meets thriller meets a little bit of high school romance, but not really. I kind of like that we didn't focus a lot on the romancy things in here, and we did focus more on the supernatural stuff. So I don't have a ton to say about it because you can't really talk about it without giving away what happens, but these were getting a little bit better, and I'm glad that I stuck with them. Okay, so those are the books that I completed this month. I also ended up DNFing 2 books for the first time in my whole entire life. I DNF'd the complete Grimm's Fairy Tales. I just couldn't do it. I tried. I've been trying for 2 months to read this book. I was so disappointed. I got like 426 or 400 some pages into this book, and I just can't finish it. I was disappointed. I was expecting this book to be like creepy, gory fairy tales, like gruesome things, and because that's what I've always been told Grimm's is about, and they're not. Like, it's just not. I mean, they're fairy tales and stuff, but a lot of them have like not happy endings, but predictable endings, and they're not that scary, and they're not that gruesome or gory. They have some really nice like illustrations and things throughout the book, and most of the stories are only a couple of pages long, you know, but I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't read any more of it. So I'm counting like the 100 or so pages that I read of this month counted toward my page total, but I didn't count it towards the fact that I read 10 books because I didn't finish this book. I ended up putting it down. And the last bit of news is that I also DNF'd a book last month. I didn't even talk about it at all because I DNF'd it at 26 pages, which is so sad because I wanted to read this book too. I ended up DNFing H.P. Lovecraft Great Tales of Horror. Again, I thought it was going to be more scary. I thought it was going to be more horror-like, and you know what was horrific? The writing style. The writing style was horrific. I am not down for these super long run-on sentences that take up 6 lines of text, and everything is incredibly just descriptive and boring. I bought this book because I wanted to read The Call of Cthulhu. Well, I did finish The Call of Cthulhu, but like barely. It was rough to get through that, and it wasn't as creepy or scary as I thought it was going to be. It really wasn't, and I don't know if like I just had an unrealistic expectation of this book. I don't know if it's just the time period that it's written in that I just don't like it or what, but like I could not pick up any of the other short stories. I'm not gonna read this. I just don't think I like the way that H.P. Lovecraft writes. I'm going to keep it because I think that the cover is beautiful, and I bought it. It's part of the Barnes & Noble Classic series. I think that it's fantastic. I'm also going to keep the Grimm's Fairy Tales for the same reason. They're both part of the Barnes & Noble Classic series. I'm going to keep them on my shelf, but I'm not going to recommend them to anybody else to read, so I guess that's just where we're at with that. So those are all the books that I read this month. Or that I read last month, because we're like halfway through December whenever I'm actually doing this, and I will try to do the December one in a more timely manner, but life happens sometimes, and that just is what it is. So let me know if you liked any of these books, if you read any of these books, if you have some wildly, vastly different opinion than me on any of them, because I'm always down to hear about that. And if you think that I didn't give a book enough of a chance, let me know about that too, and I will see you guys later. Bye.